What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball. Dressed a little bit more formally than I normally am. I actually have an in-person business meeting today, which doesn't typically happen in today's age, so I've got like 2 hours before that. So you know what? You boys dressed up a little bit for this one. But today we're here to talk about free agency. I was reading through the comments. Believe it or not, I do go through all the comments like I say that I do, and somebody had a really good video idea saying, hey, you should kind of do a recap of like all the remaining free agents still and where we think they might go. I was like, oh yeah, no, that's actually a pretty good idea. Like there's been a lot of movement in the NBA up to this point, and it's like, okay, who's even left out there to go get, especially as some of these teams are looking around and they're like, did we lose the game of musical chairs? Well, I'm here to give you just a little bit more hope. But hey, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so. But hey, let's get into the video. Alrighty, so the first name we got is Gordon Hayward, and now I can't stress enough with this video. This video is in no particular order. I haven't really gone through and looked at like who's got cap space remaining and all of this nonsense, right? Like we're kind of going to talk about what they can still provide to a team while also just being like, okay, what kind of makes some sense for those guys? So Gordon Hayward's obviously left. His time in OKC was not good, to say the least, right? He just wasn't really able to contribute, wasn't able to really find his way like onto the court for long stints, and Gordon Hayward himself was like, yeah, that kind of sucked, didn't it? We all thought the move made a ton of sense for them, so you can't fault OKC for that, even though they themselves were like, yeah, we kind of fumbled that one a little bit, but OKC makes every single good move in the book. Can't really complain. But Gordon Hayward can still do a lot of things. He can be a secondary ball handler for a team. He can still go get you some buckets. He's going to be 34, 35 years old this year, so like, I'm not expecting any more than like an 8th, 9th man or something like that, but still a great vet to have on your team regardless. Funny enough, I think one of the teams that would make some sense is him going back to Utah, you know, where it kind of all started and where he was like an all-star level player. Like, Utah could use some wings, they could use some vets on the team, and Utah's always trying to win at the end of the day, so I think bringing in a guy like Gordon Hayward, one, would be good for the fans. I think it'd be good just for like team growth and everything as they're trying to build up that young core like we were talking about, so that's a team that I could see him going to. I could also see like a Miami or something like that. Just having another veteran like that on the team could probably be good, just another shooter, something like that, but I would have to imagine since he's probably going to be getting a minimum, he's going to be trying to play for a contending team, but I'm sure he also wants to play after his short stint in OKC. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for Gordon. Next up, we got Kyle Lowry. So Kyle Lowry at this point in his career, right? Really old, but still can contribute. He was still a starter on a playoff level team last year. It's probably debatable whether or not he should be starting, but you're getting very good defense out of him and some limited shot creation at this point. I'm not saying limited is like a bad thing, but like if you give him a limited role in it, he's probably going to be pretty effective still, as he can still kind of create his own shot. He can hit open threes, things like that. He can still kind of get to the hoop a little bit. He's still got a little bit of quickness left, but it's just going to be a good leader on the team, similar to a Gordon Hayward type situation. So obviously there's a chance that he goes back to Philly or something like that, right? I could totally see him ending back up in like a Toronto, maybe as like a veteran type role, but you know, you also see the college that he went to here. Maybe a New York Knicks makes some sense. I'd like to see him in like a Denver too. I think that could be kind of cool as like a backup point guard for them, since they no longer have like Reggie Jackson. Him coming in and just being a veteran guy that can come in and contribute to them at a high level, play within the system. I think that would make a lot of sense. Otherwise, just kind of insert like championship level team, maybe like Phoenix or something like that. That's kind of where I could see like Kyle Lowry going. All right, Gary Trent Jr. next, and I hesitate recording these because I'm recording this on the 9th, and this is going up. When is this going to go up? It's probably going to go up tomorrow morning, so the 10th. So if Gary Trent Jr. is signed at this point, then, well, y'all got me on this one, right? We'll see how good my predicting skills are at the end of the day. Gary Trent Jr., I mean, you guys see the stats here, almost 14 points a game, and, like, looking at, like, his defensive efficiencies and stuff like that, he had a pretty abysmal defensive season last year, but traditionally he's a pretty good defender, so we hope that kind of increases. What is Gary Trent going to bring you? Hopefully some 3-and-D, right? Like, not the biggest dude in the world at 6'5", but should be able to contribute at that level. Not saying he's going to come in and be a starter by any means, but he's gotten buckets pretty much everywhere that he's gone. So we look at like a Philly as a potential option for him. Denver, I know a lot of Nuggets fans have been like, yeah, at least we could throw him in, and while he's not as good as KCP is, he's at least kind of a similar play style and stuff, so he'd be a good plug-in guy that could probably start for them right away, because I know I personally am just a little bit worried about Christian Brown kind of going in and being that guy right away. I can maybe see like a Milwaukee, like if he wants to just go a minimum and just kind of wants to fall into that Malik Beasley role, who he was really able to kind of project himself out after that. I could see that being a thing. Gary Trent's kind of in that weird spot where, like, you guys, if you've been watching my videos, know where I'm going with this. Like, these middle-level players sometimes get screwed by the new CBA, right? Because you can only offer so much to certain guys, and teams are really trying to avoid that apron. And so they're like, I don't really want to give out $7 million to this guy or $8 million to this guy. And that's probably where Gary Trent falls in terms of, like, production and stuff. They're certainly not going to give him, like, and watch me be wrong, but like 14, 15 mil a season or something like that is just probably not going to happen. But yeah, no, I think those kind of couple teams are where I can see Gary Trent going. Next up, we have Markelle Fultz. So Markelle Fultz is an interesting one, right? Because obviously first overall pick, he's been kind of in and out due to injuries and stuff like that. But if you guys have been watching Markelle Fultz, you know that he's generally a pretty productive player for the most part, right? And so I think that Markelle Fultz can still contribute on a high-level team at the end of the day. I don't know if it's like a Phoenix Suns or something like that. I've thought about Dallas just coming in and being a defensive-minded guard for them. The cool thing about Markelle is he's really good out in transition. He's still a good passer. And he's pretty good at just getting to the hoop and creating for himself. He's a crazy good athlete, and he's big and strong. So there's a lot that Markelle Fultz can still do for people. So I think about a team like that. I think like an ideal fit for him would be like Indiana or something like that. Like obviously they've got McConnell there already and like Halliburton and stuff, right? And Nembhard, so they probably have like enough ball handlers, but I think he'd fit their system really well. Just thinking through like other teams off the top of my head, like maybe the Lakers take a flyer on him or something. I know they probably don't need any more like non-shooters, but could be a good fit for them. Obviously, he could go back to Orlando or something. I don't think there's necessarily a role for him there at this point, but I could totally see that. Next up, Tyus Jones, definitely a valuable player. We all know the value of Tyus Jones, just ultimate like floor general type guy. It's no shock at all that he's always a pretty coveted player. You're seeing last year, I wouldn't worry about his like efficiencies and stuff so much. The Wizards were just such nonsense last year that it's like, okay, I don't really even know how you'd like reasonably judge this guy in this team. Like, you know what you're going to get out of him. The first team that comes to mind for me is like the Grizzlies, because they've tried so hard to get him in the past, and I feel like there's still kind of a role for that backup point guard on that team. Like maybe a team like the Warriors or something too come along as like another guard option. He doesn't necessarily fit their style, but just they're trying to accumulate whatever talent that they can. This is a tough one because like how much money is he going to command? Because maybe a team like Brooklyn is able to throw a little bit more money at him and he goes there. I don't know how much he wants to win or anything like that, so that's something to consider. But otherwise, like he'd be like a nice Milwaukee Buck or something like that too, just kind of come in and help them run the show and run the offense, because clearly they were struggling with that at points this year. So you're going to get a consistent player at the very least. I mean, I personally doubt he goes back to Washington. It seems like both sides have pretty much moved on from that, and I think it's pretty well agreed that it just didn't go well, and he wasn't very happy there. So you can find whatever interview of that stuff that you want, but at the end of the day, like, people say whatever they're going to say in those interviews. But Tyus Jones, good name to go after. Next up is Doug McDermott, aka Dougie McBuckets. I love Doug McDermott. I mean, one thing you're getting out of him, you're getting some size and strength, but like he's not just a three-point shooter. He is able to do like a lot more. Like he's consistently over his career been able to like catch and rip towards the hoop and like create a little bit more offense, get a floater up, things like that. Like he's a good scorer. If you get him out there, he's gonna go get some buckets, right? I mean, that's what his nickname is. That's what he goes and does. So I think that you can still get some sort of value out of him. As for like where he goes, like could we throw him on like a Dallas or something like that? Probably. They could probably use another guy like that, maybe a Cleveland. I'm trying to think who else. Like the Bulls probably need another wing. I'm kind of spitballing here as to where else they could go. Like a Portland or something might be a good fit if they really want to try to like squeeze a little bit more out of the 32-year-old, maybe a Miami or something like that. But I think any contender at the end of the day, you're getting an elite shooter and a guy that can kind of just keep the offense moving. The defense is maybe a little bit less than desirable, but I don't know. I'm not too worried about Doug McDermott just being like a nice role player for someone. Next up is Devonte Graham. So Devonte Graham was just recently traded. The Spurs basically sold him back to Charlotte, where they subsequently released him, because I don't know how much of his contract was guaranteed. I guess we could actually probably see right here. Waived by Charlotte, leaves $2.85 million in dead cap. Okay, fair enough. There you go. So Devonte Graham is such an interesting player. Kind of came into the league like second round pick, like early second round pick or something like that, and wasn't really doing a ton. And then all of a sudden he just like exploded for around near 20 points a game in Charlotte. And then people were like, oh, Devonte Graham, like look at the scoring, like look at the handle, the speed, the shot creation, all of this. We're like, got an interesting little player here, like MIP type player. Comes into the Pelicans. does like nothing in his time there. He's pretty irrelevant there. Gets traded to the Spurs or whatever. Doesn't do a whole lot there either. He's got moments where he goes and gets buckets still, but it seems like that season was kind of lightning in a bottle, if you will. But like, we still see the moments of it. So as like a reserve point guard, if you're a team needing something like that, I don't know. I feel like he can still be valuable. I haven't heard about him being like a bad vet by any means, but so I'm going to presume that he can still be a solid one for some teams. So instantly, I think like Phoenix, just whatever point guard they can get their hands on at this point is probably going to be valuable. I think he'd be kind of interesting on the Warriors. Maybe like the Grizzlies is like a reserve scorer or something. Orlando as a shooting point guard or something like that. He's obviously not going back to Charlotte, but maybe Philly, something like that. Again, well, they've got too many small guards in Philly already. And I was watching Jared McCain play yesterday, and like, I don't think he's going to necessarily be like a big time shot creator for himself in his first year. So I don't know. There's a couple places I could see him, and I'm pretty sure the Celtics roster is like full at this point, but there's definitely like a spot for him somewhere, I feel like. Next up, Landry Shamet. Pretty simple. You get an elite shooter out of him. Not much else, but Landry Shamet can come in and knock down some threes for you. So who could use something like that? I think Detroit's probably got enough of them at this point, coincidentally. So shout out Detroit for filling out their roster pretty well the rest of the way. I could see like a Toronto or something like that. Maybe he slides in there somewhere. Obviously, insert Denver into these conversations, right? Like these are kind of win now type players that you're going for. Maybe a Miami Heat or something like that. Maybe the Hornets or something like that, because they could just probably use a little bit more spacing around like LaMelo and Brandon Miller, although they kind of need a little bit more at the forward spot. Like obviously he's probably not going to go back to Orlando or anything like that. Maybe he ends up on the Clippers somehow, because the Clippers are kind of putting together this little like what's the word I'm looking for, but like an anarchist team is how I'm phrasing it. Maybe Sacramento or something too, just adding another shooter, but they've kind of got a lot of small guards, so maybe not, but that's kind of what I'm thinking for Landry Shamet. You're getting a real good shooter out of him, if nothing else. Next up, B-Ball Paul obviously was just recently waived by Philly because his contract wasn't guaranteed. And here's the thing, right? Bigs are hard to come by nowadays. I think that's something that we're learning. We've been talking about that in the Discord a little bit as of like yesterday. Actually, by the way, if you're not on the Discord, go join the Discord. Come join the conversations. It's a solid time. But there's just not a ton of like great bigs out there right now. And like, you know, bigs are always going to be harder to find just because there's less of them, right? But like in particular right now, it's a pretty low like level of bigs in the NBA right now, and there's more coming in over the next couple of years, right? And they're going to keep finding more and more, and like it'll replenish itself. But given the current market, like B-Ball Paul can still do some things for you. He's still an athletic presence, like he's still like a hard rebounder and stuff like that. I know Philly fans are a little bit annoyed by him, and it's like, look, yeah, he's undersized, and so like he's going to get like bullied in some capacity, but I don't think it's like an attitude thing still. So if you're looking to add some size, I don't think it'd be like the worst thing ever to go add him. Like, I'm not saying like Detroit needs to go get him or something. I think they've got that kind of covered. And like, yeah, quick editor's note here from AVC like 12 hours later or something like that. Yeah, fuck Detroit for making me look stupid in this one. Thinking through other teams that might need it, like maybe you could get a reserve big out of him in New York or something like that as like a Precious Achiuwa replacement, because it sounds like, at least from what I've heard, and maybe we'll even put Achiuwa on here, like he's been coveted by a couple teams because of his like versatility and everything. So maybe B-Ball Paul is like a cheaper option. Maybe he ends up in Milwaukee as like a reserve big or something like that. I don't think Miami needs him. I'm just literally like thinking through conferences and everything. Throw him on OKC just as another big option, right? Like that's always going to make some sort of sense. Otherwise, just like a team with like a lot of guard play that they run, like a lot of pick and rolls or something like that. Like maybe New Orleans probably makes some sense. They could use any big that they could get. Like obviously they just got Tice, but we all know that Tice isn't like starter quality. He's not bad, but like they obviously desperately need some center play, so maybe it's center by committee type thing. Cheddy Osman's the next one that I got here. This is more of a reserve player at this point, but I think Cheddy Osman can still come in and be a nice like average 3-and-D player for some team. I could totally see him just like coming back to San Antonio, and from everything I understand, pretty good locker room guy. So you come in, you got a nice wing with some size that can play a little bit of defense, that can shoot a little bit, nice back of the rotation type guy, right? Like for maybe a not as good team, otherwise just kind of like insurance for a better team, because he probably goes for a minimum at this point. Like if he wanted to get more playing time, maybe he ends up in like a Portland or something like that. Otherwise Minnesota, this could be like a really good grab, because you already got Joe Ingles holes on the team, and you could get another guy like this. Like, the more shooters you can add to this team on like the wings, probably the better. Minnesota probably still needs like another ball handler on the team though, so hard to say with that one. Maybe Orlando or something. They've got Gary Harris and KCP already, but maybe as a reserve option, because is Okeke coming back? I don't even remember what his current situation is, but got to think about that a little bit. Could be like a Lakers option or something. Sorry, Lakers fans, I know y'all wanted more, but wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Saddiq Bey, this is a little bit more fun of a name because obviously the stats speak for themselves a little bit more. The efficiency like wasn't great in like Atlanta for the most part, but it wasn't like bad either. So I'm not tripping too much about Saddiq Bey. Obviously he's coming off the ACL injury. We'll see how much that really affects him. It's not like he was a huge athletic presence to start with, so I'm hopeful that he'll be okay, and he's still relatively young, so let's hope that we can see that. Saddiq Bey's like career arc is so weird. Like, Detroit traded him for like no reason at all, and then Atlanta gets him and you're like, wow, that's a really good pickup by them, and then he doesn't get to play like a ton there, but he's putting up some solid numbers all said and done, and he probably goes for cheap at this point. Like, I imagine him getting like a 1-year contract with some team and then like putting on a bit more of a show and earning some money next year when there's a little bit more like free agency dollars available. Where can I picture Saddiq Bey going? I mean, look, like Villanova and going to the Knicks. No, that probably won't happen, but it'd be really, really funny. But more so just in the sense that like they have too many wings there at that point. But I could see Cleveland being a real destination. Maybe the Bulls. He gets a little bit more playing time on a team like that. Like, does like an Indiana go for him as more of like a stretch 4 or something like that? Maybe a Milwaukee. They could probably use him. It'd be really nice if a Denver could pick him up though or something. He'd be a great reserve wing for them that they've really been looking for. He'd get the playing time and everything, so that'd be a good one. All right, I promised y'all him, so here's Precious Achiuwa. Precious Achiuwa plays the 4 or the 5, which is kind of a cool thing that he can do. He can play them both pretty effectively because he's got some decent enough size and he's got a huge motor on him. Thibs obviously loved him as just like a go give your all out there, and then we'll just kind of see what happens after that. So Precious, from what I understand, is like I was saying before, pretty coveted at this point. Is one, there's not a ton of bigs out there, right? And he can like play the 4 or the 5, so teams that already have their starting center, they're like, okay, this guy could also kind of play the 4 with him if we really need him to. Obviously he doesn't do the traditional like wing type things that you want, but he's not like out of place at the 4 either, so that's what makes him kind of interesting. So thinking about like a team that could use him, like a Golden State would probably be kind of interesting. They kind of already have Kyle Anderson, but just having like another kind of like center type player on the team would probably be pretty good for them. I think like the Memphis Grizzlies, maybe not Houston. Houston's got enough bigs. Like Lakers kind of have enough of them. New Orleans could probably certainly use him in some capacity. Maybe San Antonio is like a backup center or something like that. Especially since they let Barlow go. Washington's got enough of them. Again, I'm just kind of going off the dome. Utah's definitely got enough bigs at this point. I think that's kind of it for that. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for Achiuwa. Next up, and one of my favorites, Lonnie Walker. Lonnie Walker is just a player that I really, really like. I think his all-around pretty good offensive game is pretty slept on in the NBA at this point. He was a first-round pick just like not too long ago. I guess maybe it's like 6 years ago now, which is kind of hard to imagine. What was it, 2018? It's on the screen. I always forget that like I have a screen that I can look at. Yeah, 2018. So yeah, 6 years ago. But like, I mean, you see the numbers. It was on a bad team, but you're getting 10 points a game out of him, and he can kind of do a little bit of everything offensively, and he's a good defensive player. So I see him as like maybe he's only getting another minimum contract, which I think kind of sucks, honestly, but like plug him into a good team. Again, think Denver, Boston, they don't have the room for him. I think Philly would be an interesting option, although they've kind of got the rest of that space filled out, so maybe not there. Indiana doesn't necessarily need him. Detroit doesn't necessarily need him. I don't think he goes to like a Portland or something or like that, or an OKC. It'd be cool to throw him on Minnesota as like a Nickeil Alexander-Walker alternative or something like that, because I like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I personally like Lonnie Walker just like a little bit more because I think he can do a little bit more like athletically, but otherwise, like, I guess I don't really know. He's kind of an odd one to try to fit in places. Like, again, you could throw him in Golden State. You could throw him on Phoenix. Phoenix will take any depth that they can get in some capacity, right? Maybe the Spurs? I don't know. But Lonnie Walker, he can contribute for someone, so I hope he finds a role. believe it or not, Spencer Dinwiddie's still available. Spencer Dinwiddie, like, only 31, like, he's still got some time left. It wasn't, like, the best season of all time last year, but, like, the dude can still go out there and play some NBA basketball and play a 1 or a 2, which is kind of cool. So, again, would be a really nice Minnesota Timberwolves pickup. Like, anybody that needs a guard at this point, right? Like, you're going to get a solid basketball player at the end of the day. I'm thinking about, like, the Clippers. The Clippers have a pretty solid, like, point guard rotation at this point, just between Harden and Bones. And you have to imagine that they're going to try to play Bones in some capacity. Maybe Phoenix or something. Sacramento is, like, a reserve guard in some capacity because Devin Carter's probably going to get to play a little bit. Again, throw him on Denver. I think that'd be a really cool thing because he could play with Murray. He's played with other guards a lot. Maybe a Miami or something because they play a little bit more positionless. So that could be kind of good. I can't imagine he's going back to Washington. I don't think he's a big fan of Washington from what I recall. Indiana would be kind of an interesting one too because he can play multiple positions and he can play in transition pretty well. Bulls don't need him because they don't need any more guards. God forbid that, honestly. But it'd also be cool to see him back in Brooklyn, so that'd be kind of cool as well. But you can make a case that Spencer Dinwiddie could go a lot of different places, like some of the shooting, the ball handling, and just like creation that he brings at like his age. I don't know. I'd be supportive of a team going and getting him. All right, Bismack Biyombo time. I love Bismack Biyombo. He's just so sweaty and so, like, athletic. I just love him. But, no, every time you throw Bismack Biyombo on the court, good things happen, right? Like, if you put him out there for 25 minutes, he probably walks away with 10, 11 rebounds and, like, 2 blocked shots and a couple dunks. Like, he's just known his role in the NBA for so long at this point that I just think, okay, throw him on any team and it's probably going to work out. I feel like OKC would be a good one. It really baffles me, like some of these draft picks that OKC had, and this is a conversation we'll dive into at some point with OKC, where it's a theory of like negotiating, right, in economics, where too much of something actually starts to be a negative asset at some point, and that's what their draft picks are somewhat looking like as of right now. Like, obviously, they still have the capabilities of going and moving things, but strategically, if you're all the other GMs, here's what you do. You all just band together and say, just make them hold the picks, right? Just make them hold the picks, because then they have no power, right? The odds that people do that, maybe not high, because somebody eventually caves and they go get something that they want. But, I think you could throw Bismack Biyombo on as a third center somewhere, and he could be a good contributor to you. I think like a New Orleans or something like that. You throw him out there for a decent amount of minutes, actually, and it's like, okay, him next to Zion would actually be hilarious to watch. Like, I'm not saying it's the best basketball fit, but look, if you need a center until you can go find a better one, Bismack Biyombo is a pretty solid option. OKC, again, like I said, could be a decent option for him. I think like a Miami, maybe somebody like that. Golden State would be kind of cool. I've always wanted Golden State to have Bismack Biyombo. I just think that'd be cool. I think Memphis Grizzlies, obviously, they're looking for bigs, or maybe just the Knicks. I don't know. Those are some teams. All right, y'all. This is the last one. Somebody please sign Javante Green. Please. All my Bulls fans out there, I know we all want Javante Green back. The Bulls probably aren't going to make us happy and give us Javante Green back. Javante Green is awesome. Defensively, just absolutely clamp city. Became a better three-point shooter in this last season. Just dunks on everybody all the time, despite him being so little. He's like a little Energizer bunny. He's one of those like TJ McConnell type players where like the stats don't always like tell the whole story, but he's incredibly impactful whenever he's out there, and he just gets the team energized every time he's out there, because every single play he's trying to dunk on somebody, and he's cutting to the hoop, and he's running his heart out in transition. He plays lockdown defense. He gets steals. He gets deflections. Like, throw him on any contending team, they'd be thrilled. Like, the Denver Nuggets need to be like all over this guy. He could literally be their Bruce Brown that they've missed so much. Like, he could do all those things for them, and honestly just be like even more athletic. Like, I truly believe that about Javante Green. So I hope he gets a contract somewhere. But hey, you guys let me know, like, who's your favorite remaining free agent and everything. I intentionally didn't cover a couple of them. Like, obviously, like Luke Kennard, it sounds like he's going to be back in Memphis in some capacity or something like that, but he's a really good guy to go get, and some other ones I just left off. But hey, you guys let me know in the comments, and yeah, make sure you guys keep it clean as always. If you guys are like rude or just not being like collaborative, I'm probably going to let you know, and if you keep doing it, then I'm probably just going to be like, hey, you got to go, and that means you get hidden, you don't get to play anymore. But hey, as always, I appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.